with that, we welcome in Chad Brendel of Bearcat Journal. Chad, another week, another win for the Bearcats, doing it again in dominant fashion over Houston. At this point of the season, I mean, what more can you say about the kind of performances they're turning in?
Well, there's some consistency to it, and we're to the point now we know who they are. They're a team that loves to run the football. They're a team that is playing defense at a level that very few teams in college football are executing right now. And they're able to kind of just slowly create distance. You know, the end of the first half yesterday was a perfect example. 21-10, they get the kickoff return from Trey Tucker, 42-yard run by Jared Dokes, touchdown to Josh Wiley. All of a sudden, 28-10 going in the half. And they barely scored. They've barely allowed 28 points in the last 3 weeks combined. So Houston was dead at that point. They weren't coming back.
I mean, you talk about the last 3 games especially, dominant in the offensive end. I know the defense week in and week out has been putting in the work, but Desmond Ridder seems to be on a hot streak of hot streaks right now. What's been the biggest difference that you see in him over the last couple weeks?
One, he's definitely more comfortable with who he's throwing to now. I mean, that took a little bit of time, especially with Alec Pierce out. Missed the first 3 games and then missed the Houston game as well. But you're working in Michael Young and you're working in Jordan Jones and Jaden Thompson and throwing to tight ends that didn't get much play last year because Josiah DeGuara was on the roster. So you're adding in Josh Wiley and Leonard Taylor and no Mike Warren to lean on. So that stuff all took a little bit of time for the offense to really find a rhythm. But now they know who they are. They know what they want to accomplish, and they're going out and showing that they can do it.
I know the big story this year has been that defense. I mean, number 18 in total defense, number 7 scoring defense this week. I know a lot of people on the outside looking in will say, well, look who they played. Of course, they're defensive good. But can this defense hold up against maybe some of the bigger guns out there in the country, you think?
Well, I mean, the look who they played argument, they played 3 teams the last 3 weeks that are averaging just below or well above 40 points a game. The offenses they're playing haven't been a joke. And, you look back to SMU. Shane Buechele is the leader in all of college football in passing yards for his career, as far as active players go. And Brady White from Memphis is very good. And they've completely shut them down. Clayton Tune is a solid quarterback as well. So to say that, to shrug it off by saying they haven't played anyone, the SMU is still ranked. and they hung almost 50 on Temple this week. So what they're doing is really impressive because this is what has stood out to me the most. You're watching veteran quarterbacks over the course of 4 quarters kind of lose their cool because there's nothing there for them. They can't push the ball down the field. They can't work it over the middle because the safeties are too good. The linebackers are too good. And really all they're left to attempt are quick hit stuff that you barely find any room because they're so good at tackling, right? That's why this defense is so different than most of what you see around the country in terms of defense. They tackle at an elite level, and that's Marcus Freeman's calling card.
You look at the rankings this week, they dropped a spot number 7 in the AP poll. Of course, none of this matters once the college football playoff poll comes out in a couple weeks. I know a lot of UC fans are going to say fair foul of UC dropping a spot. Where do you think they are in the grand scheme of things?
I mean, you can't argue much with it as it stands right now. Florida it was worst case scenario where Notre Dame beats Clemson. So Clemson's not going to fall past 6. So you're not going to jump ahead of Clemson in that situation. And then Florida absolutely boat races Georgia. So now you've opened up the door for Florida to jump ahead of you. What was interesting there is then Texas A&M comes along with them because Texas A&M beat Florida. So it wasn't surprising. I thought this week they might be able to hold off Texas A&M, and the votes were really close. I think they were 15 points from being number 5, and instead they're number 7 in the AP poll. So they're going to still have opportunities to hang around, and that's what they're going to have to do because we know how this works. Like the system is actually rigged. they're called the Autonomous Five. Everybody wants to call them the Power Five. The real name is the Autonomous Five because they make the rules, and the rules are slanted in their favor, which is okay. But, you know, you can have honest discussions about the way that the system is set up. The system is not set up to have a group of 5 team crash the party. The difference with this UC team being they are higher and farther along in the process than anybody's ever been. And again, you're right. We don't know where the playoff committee is going to have them. But even then, like if you go back to UCF's run, they couldn't get inside the top 10 from the playoff committee. And this Cincinnati team's already, you know, eliminated a lot of that work that needs to be done. We've seen how much chaos has happened in college football. We've got, 6 weeks still to go, basically. Keep winning. Hang around. Keep winning convincingly. And then see where the chips fall, and maybe you do sneak in. But I wouldn't expect it because they're going to find a way to find 4 Power 5 teams to put in there. Watch out. Here comes Oregon. Here comes USC. You know, the Pac-12 teams that haven't been playing will enter this picture as well as we get a little more into it.
Well, you kind of brought up my next question, which was we're going to talk the mythical fantasy world that, hey, UC, I think ESPN has them a 5% chance at making the playoff. BYU's right there with them. Up to 10 now. There you go. Do you think that there is a scenario, a realistic scenario, other than a bunch of teams dropping out, that the Bearcats could crack that top 4?
Yeah, but it's not going to be easy because the system's not designed for Cincinnati to crack into the top 4. But if you continue to do what they've done, which is not only win because your defense is great, but win because your offense is playing really well also, now you've got a recipe that shows the committee, look, we're doing everything we're supposed to do here. We're not some gimmicky, splashy offense that's going to play Alabama and get smoked because, you know, they're bigger and better. Cincinnati's saying, look, we've got a great defense and we got an offense that complements them really well. And they do need they need help. I mean, there's 7. So, and Texas A&M's probably not going to lose again. And they're not going to go to the SEC championship game because they already lost to Alabama. So you've got to worry about that. You would think Florida's going to probably have to play Alabama at this point in the SEC title game. That would probably knock them out. But then Notre Dame and Clemson have already played. Notre Dame wins. Is Notre Dame going to be Clemson again in the ACC title game? I don't feel great about that one. So, look, Clemson, Ohio State, and Alabama are going to be in. Right now, Notre Dame has a stranglehold on that 4th spot. You got to figure out a way, you know, to have some things happen around you to open up one of those doors.
I mean, if you asked Luke Fickell, I'm sure behind closed doors, he'd probably say just the fact that the team is in that talk is great for the Bearcats because they're a group of 5 team, they're in the top 10, and especially on the recruiting paths, as someone who follows this way more closely than I do, is being in the top 10 and being in that conversation, is that helping them when it comes out there? I mean, as if Luke Fickell needed any more help?
Well, I mean, they've started off the 2022 class with a 3-star, really high-end defensive back from Georgia, and then a 4-star wide receiver from the middle Central Texas that was committed to Baylor that UC flipped, and then a 4-star linebacker from Florida that was committed to Florida State that UC flipped. That's different than what we've seen in the past. And then they get a high 3-star defensive end from West Virginia yesterday after the game. They got a 3-star safety from Tennessee. You know, a lot of this blueprint was Ohio kids, right? All Ohio kids. Now there's a lot of other kids around the country that are watching UC football and going, especially defensive guys. If you're a defensive player and you're watching this team right now, you want in because they're fast, they're aggressive, they hit. It's got to be attractive to a teenager thinking, you know, I can come play in that style of defense.
Looking at their schedule, 4 more games left in the regular season, ECU, UCF, Temple, and Tulsa. A couple tough ones, UCF and Tulsa both on the road. But what do you think is the biggest obstacle left in front of this team to capturing that championship and solidifying this as one of the all-time great seasons?
I mean, that UCF game is still, that offense is explosive. And the real test is going to be to see, they did it last year in Nippert Stadium, held them under 30, which was the first time in like 4 seasons they've been held under 30 points. Can you do it down there in Orlando, in the bounce house? There's going to be 30, 40,000 people, as many as they can possibly get into the building that are going to be there. That team last year got into the red zone 5 times and only scored 1 touchdown against the Cincinnati defense. Can they pull that off again? That's going to be the looming question for this team. The good news is UCF's defense is awful, and they just lost 4 starters that were kicked off the team. Now, that's not good news. But defensively, they're going to have trouble stopping Cincinnati's attack as well. So we might finally get to see a little bit of a shootout 2 weeks from yesterday down in Orlando.
Now, I know we're going to speculate a little bit here because we don't know how this season's going to end, but that 2009 season obviously ranks up there as the best, I guess you could say.
No, they were undefeated. They earned that.
Where does this team rank? If they finish this season like they are on this trajectory, do they match that team or come close, or where in your eyes?
I think defensively they're better. Clearly better than the 08 team is the best defense I've seen at UC in this modern era. The 09 team was all offense. And a lot of those games were 48-45 decided on the final possession. So it's being done in a completely different fashion. That team probably gets the nod in that they were playing in that old Big East, which, you had West Virginia and you had Louisville and you had Pittsburgh and some teams that were playing really well that you had to go through. But that season was not – okay, I want to phrase this properly. That season was fun, but there was always the cloud of Brian Kelly leaving. Like, everybody knew it was coming, especially as Notre Dame got worse and worse that year and that job was open and they made a change early. Brian's name just hung around like, everybody's enjoying it, but you couldn't enjoy it too much because every conversation was Brian Kelly's, not going to be here after this year. It feels different this time because fans are actually getting to, enjoy it a little bit, even though there is always Luke Fickell's name. Michigan's going to come open probably. Everybody throws Luke Fickell's name in there. I can't see somebody as deeply rooted in Columbus as Luke Fickell is, being the head coach in Ann Arbor. But it just feels like this has been a little bit more enjoyable, even though fans haven't had the opportunity to enjoy it with the team. But on the field, I would love to see that game, Chris. I would love to see that game, to see strength on strength and to see Tony Pike against that defense with Marty Gilliard and Armand Benz and Isaiah Peed. That would be epic. Not now, because Tony's arm's a noodle. He can't throw anymore. And some of those guys are getting up there in age. But seeing those two teams play would be awesome.
He's Chad Brendel of Bearcat Journal. Appreciate you joining us, Chad.
Thanks for having me, brother.